The phone rang like a siren in the dead of night. He jolted upright, heart hammering, disoriented. 3:08 a.m. The screen read, unknown caller. His thumb hovered over the decline button, but something compelled him to answer. Hello? Silence, then static. A man's voice, raspy, worn down, the kind that comes from too many cigarettes or too many mistakes, cut through the line. Your wife gave me this number. Pause. I'm calling collect, from county jail. Click. That was it. He stared at the screen, unsure if he'd imagined it. Then he turned to look at his wife, still asleep beside him. Peaceful. Her back to him. He waited for her to stir, but she didn't. She breathed softly, unaware that something had just shattered inside the man lying next to her. He sat at the edge of the bed, phone still in his hand, blood pounding in his ears. His wife gave this man his number? Someone in jail? Why? The next 10 minutes passed in a fog. He replayed the words over and over. The tone. The confidence in the man's voice. The certainty that the number he dialed wasn't random. And that name, his wife. Not a woman or some lady. He'd said your wife. Had she? No. No, it didn't make sense. She barely left the house besides work and errands. Their evenings were routine. Dinner, scrolling through phones, quiet nights. But now that he thought about it, they hadn't talked, really talked, in months. Maybe longer. She'd grown quieter. Distant. Was that stress? Boredom? Or something else? He checked her phone while she slept. Locked. He'd never tried before. She always said, "Why would I hide anything?" Now he wondered. He lay back down beside her but didn't close his eyes. Instead, he stared into the dark, heart weighed down with suspicion. When the sun began to bleed into the room hours later, it found him still awake. When she finally opened her eyes, she smiled sleepily. "Hey," she said. "Why were you up so early?" He stared at her. "Some guy called me from jail last night," he said flatly. Her brow furrowed. "What? Said you gave him my number?" She sat up now, fully alert. "What are you talking about? 3 a.m. collect call. He said you gave him my number?" Silence. Confusion flickered across her face. Then offense. "I have no idea what you're talking about. Why would I give anyone in jail your number? That doesn't even make sense." "I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I don't know anyone in jail." "You sure?" Her jaw clenched. "Excuse me? I mean, come on, this isn't normal. I don't get calls from jail at 3 in the morning. Someone said you gave him my number?" "He used your name." She shook her head in disbelief. "I don't know what kind of prank this is, but I don't have anything to do with it." He stood up. "I'm just saying, if there's something I need to know." "There isn't." You hesitated. "I just woke up to an accusation from my own husband." "Of course I hesitated." They stared at each other, both suddenly wide awake, and not because of caffeine. "You're being ridiculous," she said, climbing out of bed. "Seriously, do you think I'm sneaking off to see criminals behind your back?" He didn't answer. That was the first mistake. Her face twisted. "Wow." She left the room, barefoot, slamming the door behind her. He didn't follow. He just sat down again and tried to make sense of the storm building inside him. It wasn't the call, it was what it pulled up. All the things they hadn't said. The glances he'd noticed. The emotional distance he'd ignored. He remembered last week when she had laughed a little too brightly at something on her phone and quickly locked it when he walked by. He told himself not to be that guy. Not the paranoid husband. Not the insecure type. But now he wasn't so sure. She returned, dressed for work, still fuming. "Let me make something clear," she said. "If you seriously believe I'm giving my number to inmates, maybe we've got a bigger problem than some random call." And she left. No kiss goodbye. No, "I love you." Just silence. And that silence said everything. he sat alone for another hour. Thought about calling the number back. Thought about calling her. But he didn't. Instead, he sat in that heavy quiet, hearing the echoes of what he hadn't wanted to admit until now. That call didn't break anything. It just revealed what was already cracked. He barely slept the next night. Every creak in the house made him flinch. His thoughts circled the same drain. Who was that man, and why did he sound so certain? He'd never heard the voice before, but the familiarity in the way he said your wife kept cutting deeper the more he thought about it. By the time morning came, his doubt had hardened into something uglier. He watched her at breakfast. She moved around the kitchen like nothing had happened. Coffee. Toast. Phone buzzed. She smiled at something on her screen, then looked up and caught him watching her. "What?" she asked, not unkindly. "Who was that?" She blinked. "Who was who? Who just texted you?" She exhaled. "Work." He nodded slowly. "You're sure?" She stopped, toast halfway to her mouth. "Are we really doing this?" "You tell me." "I told you yesterday. I don't know who that guy was. I didn't give anyone your number." "And you're sure about that? No old friend? No one from your past?" Her eyes narrowed. "What are you even accusing me of?" "I don't know," he said. "But I can't shake this feeling like I don't know what's going on anymore." She set the toast down. "Then maybe the problem isn't me." Something in her tone shifted, more tired than angry now. "Do you think I've been unfaithful?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I think you've been distant. For a long time. That's not the same thing." "No, but it's a start." She stared at him. "So what do you want me to say? That I'm sorry someone randomly said my name on a call you can't verify? I want you to tell me the truth." "I already did." They sat in silence, the air between them thick with accusation and doubt. The kind of silence that doesn't happen overnight. It builds slowly, one unspoken thought at a time, until there's more not said than said. Later that day, he checked the phone bill. There it was, a brief call, listed as incoming, 3:08 a.m., no number attached. Just unknown. Not enough to prove anything, but enough to keep the fire burning in his head. He found himself scrolling her old social media posts, looking for anything strange. A like from someone he didn't recognize. A vague comment. A name that looked familiar but didn't match anyone in her current circle. It was all so meaningless, and yet felt like a trail. A breadcrumb line leading nowhere. That night, he watched her fall asleep again. She looked peaceful. Still. Trusting. And he resented it. He resented how calm she was, how undisturbed. As if she didn't care that his mind was unraveling. As if the suspicion wasn't eating him alive. He wondered how she could lie so easily, if she was lying. Or if she was just exhausted from being with someone who didn't trust her anymore. The next morning, they didn't speak. Not one word. She left for work. He stayed home and stared at the ceiling for hours. Around noon, he picked up the phone and called an old friend, someone he hadn't spoken to in months. Someone who used to be his sounding board before life got too busy. "Can I ask you something?" he said after the small talk dried up. "Shoot. If you got a call from jail, and the guy said your wife gave him your number, what would you do?" The line was quiet for a second too long. "I'd probably lose my mind," the friend said. "But also, if you trust her, then it shouldn't matter, right?" He didn't answer. "Do you trust her?" the friend asked. "I don't know. That's your problem, man. If the foundation's already cracked, anything can shake it loose." He hung up feeling worse. The call hadn't given him clarity, just confirmation that he was spiraling. But he couldn't stop. It was like his brain needed to find something. A justification for the discomfort in his gut. A reason why things had felt off for so long. That evening, he tried to talk to her again. "You remember when we used to tell each other everything?" he asked. She looked at him carefully. "Yes. Do you still feel like you can?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Sometimes." Why only sometimes? Because I don't think you see me anymore. The words hit harder than he expected. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but deep down he knew she was right. Somewhere along the line, he'd stopped being curious about her. He stopped asking about her day. Stopped listening to the small things. And now those small things felt like a chasm he couldn't cross. I just want to understand, he said. Then stop looking for what's not there, she replied. But he couldn't. Because the doubt had already settled inside him, and no amount of reassurance could push it out. Not now. Not anymore. He couldn't let it go. Logic told him the call was likely a mistake, but logic had nothing to do with trust. He stopped answering her texts during the day. One-word replies. Cold silences. She noticed. That night, she confronted him again. Are we really still doing this? She asked. You act like this came out of nowhere, he said. But it didn't. That call just exposed it. Exposed what? That we've been pretending. She crossed her arms. Pretending what? That this thing between us is still alive. That we're okay. That we're connected. We haven't been in months. Years, maybe. She blinked. So you're blaming me for a wrong number now? I'm saying the call was a match, and we're the pile of dry leaves. She sat down, quiet for once. He couldn't tell if she was thinking or just tired. You want the truth? She asked. He nodded. I've felt alone in this marriage for a long time. You stopped seeing me. Stopped asking about me. You come home, say hi, eat, watch TV, sleep. I became background noise. You never said anything. I tried. You weren't listening. His chest tightened. He remembered the time she asked, Are you even hearing me? He always said yes. He lied. So you shut down? No. I waited. I waited for you to come back to me. But you didn't. And now? I don't know. I don't know if I even want to fix it. That stung more than any betrayal he imagined. The call was nothing compared to this, her honesty. Her disconnection. The quiet resignation in her voice. He stood still. Then why are you still here? I've been asking myself that too. She got up, left the room. He didn't follow. He sat in the kitchen alone, lights dim, heart burning. He remembered when he used to plan surprises for her. The way she used to look at him like he was the only man in the world. When did that end? He opened a drawer and pulled out a photo, an old one. They were on a beach. Smiling. Her hair wild in the wind. His arms wrapped around her. That felt like another life. He tried to tell himself it could go back. That maybe if they talked more, tried harder, remembered why they got married in the first place, maybe there was hope. But hope didn't undo distance. The next morning, she didn't come back from her run. Not right away. When she walked in, she was carrying a small bag. He raised an eyebrow. You going somewhere? She nodded. My sister's. For how long? I don't know. He didn't stop her. Didn't beg. Didn't cry. She paused at the door, keys in hand. I'm not running away. I'm giving us space. He nodded. Okay. I need to know if we're something you want to fight for, or something you're just afraid to lose. He said nothing. And then she was gone. Just like that. The silence in the house returned, louder than ever. No humming in the next room. No clinking dishes. No soft voice asking about dinner. Just him. And the echo of a single sentence, Your wife gave me this number. He stared at the wall, then picked up the phone. Called the carrier. Asked for details on the call. The rep told him it was a misdial. A number with the same last 4 digits, different area code. Wrong number. It had nothing to do with her. She told the truth. He laughed, bitter. The irony wasn't lost on him. All this chaos, because of a mistake. But the real mistake wasn't the call. It was not believing her. It was not listening. It was all the times he thought being quiet meant being stable. He sat on the couch, phone in hand, staring at the blank home screen. No messages. No missed calls. Just silence. And now, he finally understood that the call didn't create the distance. It just forced him to see it. Days passed in silence. The quiet wasn't peaceful, it was loud with absence. Her shoes weren't by the door. Her scent didn't linger in the hallway. The bed felt twice as big and half as warm. He'd always thought he valued solitude. Now he knew the difference between being alone and being left. He kept expecting a message. A call. Some sign that she missed him, too. But she didn't reach out. It forced him to ask himself something he hadn't dared before. If she didn't come back, would he fight for her? He replayed their last conversation over and over. Her voice when she said she didn't know if this was something worth fixing. It haunted him more than any accusation ever could. He thought about all the small betrayals, things he never labeled as such. Neglect. Disinterest. Distance disguised as routine. He started journaling. Just thoughts. Fragments of feelings he hadn't been brave enough to say out loud. Pages filled quickly. Not with blame. But regret. He realized he had let their relationship decay not through violence, not through lies, but through silence. Through absence while present. He had been physically home but emotionally gone. She was right, he hadn't seen her. And now he was seeing everything too late. He found himself sitting on their couch at night, thinking of all the times she tried. The conversations she initiated that he brushed off. The gentle touches he ignored. The arguments she let go, thinking it wasn't worth the fight. She had waited for him to wake up. And when he didn't, she finally stopped trying. He looked around their home and saw evidence of her everywhere. Her bookmarks on the shelf. Her mug still drying on the rack. A scarf hanging behind the door. All signs of a woman who wanted to be there, until she didn't. He decided to call her. Not to convince her to come back. Not to apologize out of guilt. But because for the first time, he didn't want to hide behind ego. When she answered, her voice was guarded. "I didn't call to fight," he said. "Then why?" "I wanted to say I'm sorry. And I mean that. Not just for the way I handled the call. For everything before that. For not listening. For not seeing you." She was quiet. "I don't know if it's too late," he continued. "But I'm not okay with how things ended." "Neither am I," she said softly. "I understand why you left. I needed space. I know. You gave more than I deserved." Another silence, this one not hostile. "I thought about that night," she said. "The call. It really wasn't about the call, was it?" "No. It was the trigger. Not the problem. I felt invisible." "I made you feel that way," he admitted. "I was starting to think, maybe we were over. Are we? I don't know." He felt that answer deep in his chest. It wasn't hopeful. But it wasn't final either. "I don't want to lose you," he said. "But if I do, I'll know it's because I waited too long to show up." She let out a long breath. "I don't hate you, you know. I wouldn't blame you if you did. I just got tired of loving someone who wasn't there. I'm here now. I just wish that counted for more. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't." He nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "I just needed you to know. I do." They hung up not with a promise, but a pause. A small crack of light where there had only been shadow. He didn't know what would happen next. Whether she'd come back, or whether they'd end things with grace. But for the first time, he wasn't trying to control the outcome. He was accepting responsibility. He finally understood that betrayal isn't always an affair or a lie. Sometimes it's what you don't say. What you don't see. What you stop doing. And healing doesn't start when the other person forgives you. It starts when you stop lying to yourself. He started therapy. Not because anyone told him to, but because he finally admitted he wasn't okay. Not just because of the relationship, because of himself. The call, the silence, her departure, it all peeled back the layers he had ignored for years. Underneath it was a man full of unspoken fear, conditioned detachment, and emotional habits he never questioned. The therapist asked him when he learned to shut down. He thought back to his childhood. A home where emotions were seen as weakness. Arguments ended in slammed doors and cold shoulders, not apologies. He learned early that silence kept things safe. And he brought that same silence into his marriage, thinking it made him strong. Steady. Now he knew it made him distant. He started noticing patterns. How he deflected intimacy with sarcasm. How he used busyness as a shield. How every time she reached for him emotionally, he offered logic instead of empathy. He wrote her a letter. Not to send, just to understand. A letter where he told the truth he never said out loud. That he was scared she'd leave long before she ever actually did. That he felt like he was failing her, and instead of trying harder, he withdrew. That he let pride talk louder than love. That the moment she said she didn't feel seen, he realized he hadn't even looked. He read the letter back to himself. And cried. It wasn't about getting her back anymore. It was about becoming the kind of man who deserved her in the first place. He started fixing small things. Not for her, but for himself. He cooked dinner instead of ordering out. Read the books gathering dust on their shelf. He called his mother and actually listened. He checked in with friends he'd let drift. He sat in silence without needing to fill it with noise. The house was still empty, but he was filling himself back in. One night, after another quiet dinner alone, he scrolled through old pictures. The vacation ones, yes, but also the ordinary days. Her sitting cross-legged on the floor, laughing at something dumb. Him mid-sentence, animated. The easy closeness of people who believed they'd never drift. He finally understood that love isn't a thing you prove once and forget. It's something you choose every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. She called the next week. Hey, she said. Hey. I've been thinking. Me too. I don't know what this is, or what it should be. But I know I'm not angry anymore. He closed his eyes, relieved. I'm glad. I've been doing some work on my own. Trying to figure out what I want. Have you? Some of it. And? I want peace. With or without you. I want that too, he said. But with you, if it's possible. She didn't respond right away. He didn't rush her. I think, maybe we could talk. In person, she said. I'd like that. They met a few days later. The hug was careful, but real. The conversation wasn't about fixing everything. Just seeing if there was still something there worth holding. They didn't call it reconciliation. They called it reintroduction. He told her about therapy. She told him about journaling. They both admitted where they went wrong, no defense, no blame. Just ownership. He asked if she wanted to come home. She said not yet. And he respected it. Because rebuilding isn't about flipping a switch. It's about showing up consistently. With honesty. With humility. With presence. He told her she didn't need to decide today. That he was willing to take it slow. She smiled. That's the first time you haven't rushed me. He realized she was right. This time, he would move at the speed of trust. And maybe, just maybe, they weren't broken. Just paused. Waiting for both of them to be ready. They met once a week. No expectations, no labels. Sometimes over coffee, sometimes a walk. Conversations were awkward at first, then natural. Not about the past, about the present. Who they were now, not who they had been. They didn't pretend everything was fine. They didn't try to erase what happened. They both knew trust couldn't be repaired with promises, it had to be earned day by day. He kept going to therapy. She started too, separately. They didn't share every detail of their sessions, but they shared enough. Enough to say, I'm working on this. And mean it. They were learning how to speak honestly, without heat. How to listen without defensiveness. How to ask, what do you need right now? Instead of assuming. There was no guarantee they'd make it. But there was clarity in the effort. One day she asked, "Do you still think about that night?" He nodded. "Not like before." "Me either. It was never about the call." "I know," she said. "But if it hadn't happened, we'd still be asleep." They both knew the truth. The chaos was a wake-up call. A crack in the surface that revealed everything buried beneath. They didn't think it, but they understood it. Sometimes the ugliest moments shine light on what's been ignored too long. He asked if she wanted to come home again. This time, she said yes. But with conditions. Weekly check-ins. Shared chores. Active listening. No more disappearing into phones. No more assuming silence meant comfort. If something hurt, they'd say it. If something felt off, they'd name it. It wasn't romantic at first. It was work. But it was real. The first night back, they slept facing each other but didn't touch. Just lay there, breathing in sync. Not as lovers. As two people choosing presence over assumption. She told him she wasn't the same woman who left. He said he wasn't the same man who let her go. They agreed to rebuild, not what they had, but something new. Something rooted in honesty, not performance. Connection, not routine. People asked what changed. They said everything and nothing. They still argued, still got tired, still had bad days. But now, they returned to each other. Not out of obligation, but desire. Months later, they went to dinner at a place they used to love. She reached across the table, touched his hand, and smiled. "You're here," she said. "Not physically, emotionally." He smiled back. "I'm not leaving again." That night, they talked about the idea of forever, not as a guarantee, but a choice. A promise to stay curious about each other. To notice. To speak. To stay. He thought about the man he used to be. The one who thought love was maintenance-free, that silence was safety, that time meant closeness. He didn't hate that man. But he never wanted to be him again. She thought about how long she waited to be heard. How close she came to giving up. How the scariest part wasn't the call, it was the feeling of being invisible. Now she felt seen. Not just in passing, but with intention. They kept growing. As individuals, as a couple. They had hard days. Slips. Setbacks. But now they had tools. Now they had courage. Not the kind that fixes everything. The kind that keeps showing up. They never told people the full story. Just that they hit a wall and chose to climb instead of turn around. He stopped trying to be the man who never made mistakes. He became the man who learned from them. She stopped waiting to be loved perfectly. She accepted love that was real, flawed, but willing. They never looked at 3 a.m. the same way again. Not with fear. With gratitude. Because sometimes, the thing that breaks you is also the thing that wakes you. And sometimes, healing starts with the worst phone call of your life.